Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squad for boxing news and views from around the internet. And a heavyweight news mashup video today, starting with Bulgarian heavyweight contender Kubrat Pulev, who is the IBF mandatory challenger. According to ESPN, which had also previously reported that he'd be facing Mark Demori November 9th, according to them, he is now going to be facing Rydell Booker. Apparently the Demori fight had fallen apart and Booker has stepped in. Booker, you may recall, was a once highly touted heavyweight prospect. He lost to James Toney back in 2004, and then he ran into trouble with the law. He was jailed for over a decade in relation to drug charges. Since he came out a few years back, he's had a couple of fights, including one loss to Jermaine Franklin earlier this year. He's the same age as Kubrat Pulev, 38, and it's probably a better fight than the Demori fight, but it is still a stay busy fight, and I think many people would expect Kubrat Pulev will get through this fight, maybe not completely comfortably, but he should be able to do enough to outpoint Rydell Booker, who himself is a decent boxer, and that's what we saw against Jermaine Franklin, and there were many who thought Booker did really well in that fight and perhaps was pretty hard done by on the cards. Not to say that it was a dominant performance by Booker against Franklin, but he certainly was in that fight, so he will be able to, especially on the counter-punching front, I think be able to give Kubrat Pulev a few things to think about, but overall Pulev should win what really is a high-level stay-busy fight. And to another stay-busy fight, Efe Ajagba has been confirmed to have a fight on October the 26th on the Eriksson Lubin and Nathaniel Gallimore card that's going to be in Pennsylvania. So Ajagba has been out of the ring for a couple of months now, so I don't actually mind this fight too much for Efe Ajagba because as a prospect, he's 11-0 at the moment. His last fight was back in July. Probably needs a little bit of activity, just a bit of a rollover, and then hopefully another fight by the end of this year. Needs to stay busy and obviously keep developing, keep building that record resume, and get a few more rounds under his belt. Obviously that last one against Ali Erendemiresian was quite a good fight. It went the distance, but this one on October 26th, not sure it's going to be any one of any note. I think this just is another, like the Kubrat Pulev one, just to stay busy, probably a much lower stay busy, but a stay busy nonetheless. The promoter for Daniel Dubois, Frank Warren, says he is interested in making a Charles Martin fight for his fighter if it can so be made. So he was asked by Seconds Out in an interview of three names that they had posed. One was Otto Wallen, one was Christian Hammer, and the other was Charles Martin. And Frank Warren, he ruled out the Hammer fight immediately because there were some issues to getting it made. He said potentially the Wallen one could be made potentially because he said Wallen had signed on with Bob Arum. We haven't had any official confirmation of that, but he said he wanted to put a call in regarding Charles Martin because he thought that was a good fight for Daniel Dubois at this stage of his career. And a few other statements from that interview on Dubois. He said hopefully he'll be out by the end of the year, and they're hoping to have him on the same card as Joe Joyce. And obviously if they are looking to potentially at some point, maybe in 2020, build towards a Joyce and Dubois fight, it makes sense to have them on the same card to build a little bit of a rivalry there, because at the moment, there's been a bit of talk among hardcore boxing fans about how good a fight that might be, but it's not exactly something that's taken over the market or anything like that. But Frank Warren also of Dubois said he needs more polish for his boxing ability, but he does believe he will be ready to fight for and win a world title in 2020. Although how he would do that, it's unclear, given that at this point it looks like the belts will be tied up at least until this point next year. So never say never, but I guess it sort of seems a remote possibility for a 2020 title shot for Daniel Dubois. But there is no real rush in some regards because he's just turned 22. If it does end up being 2021, for example, I don't think fans are going to hold that against him. And at this point in time, it would seem hard for him to navigate into a mandatory position to get a fight anytime soon. But of that Charles Martin fight, yeah, I don't mind that. And Frank Warren did sort of say, the one thing that he's a little bit iffy on is about building a comparison between Joshua and Dubois. And obviously that has backfired before, because earlier in Dubois' career, Frank Warren was actively sort of stoking that fire, but it all sort of came a cropper against Kevin Johnson, who Joshua knocked out early. Dubois was taking the distance against Johnson, and that sort of had a little bit of a blowback in terms of the way that fans perceived him after that. He sort of shaken that off with some of the development in the past year and some of the very good performances that he has put up. But in terms of that sort of level of Charles Martin, someone who's somewhere between, about 20 and 35 in the world, I think those are the sort of fights, even the hammer fight, I'd like that for Daniel Dubois. And I think he would beat both of those guys right now. And those are seemingly logical type steps. Whether he can get them as opponents, it remains to be seen. And Daniel Dubois, he has also collected his Boxing Writers Club Award for Best Young Boxer. And here is a clip from Daniel Dubois' social media of that.
He's known as Dynamite. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's winner of the Jeffrey Simpson Young Boxer of the Year Award is Dynamite's Daniel Dubois.
Firstly, I want to say the Boxing Writers Club for this prestigious award tonight. It means a lot, and thank you very much. I also want to thank my family, my dad, and without them I wouldn't be here today. So a massive thank you to them. I also want to thank Martin and Tony Bowers for helping me on this journey and getting me in the zone for every fight I have. They put me in the zone in the right frame of mind to go out there and go to the war and handle business. So thank you.